I'd like to start with Shira Rudderman. She's a professional philanthropist and social activist. She serves as an executive director of the Ruderman Family Foundation, a private family foundation that invests in 3 primary areas of focus: advocating and advancing the inclusion of people with disabilities throughout the society, strengthening the relationship between Israel and American Jewish community, and modeling the practice of strategic philanthropy worldwide. Shira received an honorary doctorate from Haifa University and Brandeis University and holds MA in Public Policy and BA in Education from Hebrew University. Thank you for coming, Shira. Scott Berrie, a lifelong New Yorker. Scott Berrie still remembers the thrill of watching King Kong on the big screen at the Ziegfeld Theater in New York on New York's Eve of 1976. Impulse Creative Production, founded in 2008, produces thought-provoking independent films. Before founding Impulse, Berrie founded SCOHO, New York LLC, combining business with social good. Berrie has a master's degree in international relations and Middle East studies from Columbia University and MBA from New York University. Scott serves as a vice president of Russell Berrie Foundation, investing in innovative ideas designed to foster religious understanding and pluralism among other causes. Welcome, Scott. And a little jet-lagged friend from England, Aaron Etingen, CEO and founder of Global University Systems. GUS is a for-profit private company which owns and operates several private for-profit colleges and universities in UK, Canada, Israel, and Europe. Aaron founded the business in 2003 with 1 institution and 4 students, and fast forward, and today GUS serves more than 100,000 students in its campuses and more than 20 million students online through one of its 30 owned institutions across the globe. The business continues to grow rapidly across the world with many learning verticals, including law, medical, engineering, IT, and others. GUS is a leading dynamic learning education platform providing students worldwide access to education and lifelong opportunities. That's very impressive. And I know that philanthropically, Aaron has been involved in uplifting women education and women empowerment worldwide, and many other causes that we would love to hear more about. So I would like to begin maybe with a personal question to the panelists. How did it all start? How did you start to believe that with philanthropy you have a chance to move the needle and change the social situation in a community?
So we're going in very linear fashion here. I grew up in Bergen County, which I think was perhaps back in the 70s and 80s, maybe the second largest givers to Israel. I'm going to go back even further. When I was a kid, I'll tell you a quick story. When I was a kid, my grandfather used to talk about a pool that he donated to Israel. And back in 1972, when Mark Spitz was winning all these gold medals and he was this Jewish hero, I thought, my grandfather had donated this Olympic-sized pool, and as a 7-year-old kid, I had a great imagination, and I was like, Mark Spitz is practicing in my grandfather's pool, and it's amazing. But I never saw the pool, only until about 10 years ago when I discovered a dusty old book in some of my father's things. And it was a pool maybe half the size of this stage. And my grandfather was not a wealthy man. And his love of Israel was so deep that he gave to a pool for kids who came from the Holocaust. And the pictures were beautiful of these nurses dressed in old uniforms with these young kids who were black and white sepia, and it just was a gorgeous thing. So it didn't matter that Mark Spitz didn't practice there. But so that idea of philanthropy and giving and love of Israel started at a very, very young age. And my father carried on that tradition in creating the Russell Berrie Foundation. and focusing on Israel and the miracle that Israel is. And I think one last thing I'll say is that my father passed on to me a love of the underdog, and Israel was always the underdog, and a miracle, and that's really how it all started.
Shira, who inspired you to get involved in philanthropy?
So good morning, everyone. I'll start by saying that I think the word philanthropy is very confusing because it feels very removed. It feels like it belongs to, as in your dream. It's like, these very, very wealthy people that you have nothing to do with them, and philanthropy is there, and we are all here. And that's how I used to think about it, because I did not grow up with the understanding of philanthropy. I knew chesed. I knew social activism. I knew in Israel, you see injustice, you just come and do something. And closer, thank you. And later on in my life, when I met my husband Jay, and in America the word philanthropy was very sophisticated and professional, it became like I can take my values that I grew up in with no money, in a very, very, very simple household, but understood it right away from a value proposition. And I believe in public policy, so I always had the desire to impact the society and the public. And suddenly I could connect it with the idea of money. And I said that because I think it's important for all of us to understand that there are different forms of philanthropy and different abilities to do philanthropy. However, you can be very, very rich and do very little philanthropy, and you can be with maybe less money and be an activist, an investor like no other. The power is to combine both, is to understand the ability that you have financially, and to take your values and bring them together and create a change. So for me, philanthropy was something a bit removed until I came to America in terms of being a professional person working in it 24 hours. But my passion did not come from money, and my ability to do something did not come from understanding that there is some tax benefits. So I'll end by saying that in Hebrew, the understanding of tikkun olam or philanthropy or chesed or tzedakah, all coming from the same path. It just depends how far you go and how you build yourself into it.
Aaron, I want to focus this question on something more specific to what you do. You have a successful business which is for profit, but it has tremendous social impact. How do you see that connection of creating social impact but actually trying to make a successful business?
So I'm glad you asked that, because that was an argument which I always had with my cousin Yulia here in the room, who's our Chief Impact Officer. And for years, she was stopping me to do more philanthropy. And I was saying, what do you mean? We run the world's largest education company, and as long as we do it really well, but really well, and we mean well, then that's good enough. And Yulia was saying, no, it's not good enough. You can do more, and you should do more. 3 years ago, I was really touched by, I was very sorry to see what was happening in Afghanistan with the exit of the coalition forces. And I was particularly feeling let down, the women of Afghanistan. We had this huge education company at our disposal. We had thousands of courses, we had online platform. So we opened the whole platform to women of Afghanistan. And today we have 41,000 women studying on that platform. And that was probably the first sort of selfless act which we done as a kind of philanthropy without utilizing what we had. And then there's a whole different chapter what happened when, after 7th of October.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I wonder, when you look back on your philanthropy or giving, what would you say was your most significant gift? It's
Okay, I got the mic. So for me, again, coming back from kind of spending the last 20 years building a global company, it actually was quite cosmic. I was celebrating. We had a huge event in Cannes, in the south of France. We were celebrating 20th year for global university systems. We had all the partners, all the directors, hundreds of people. And 7th of October happened on the day. And I'm sort of surrounded by half of our management team is Israeli and Jews, and we are sort of highly impactful. We feel we can solve everything. We're a bit of a control freaks, and suddenly there was something we could not control. And we were all broken, probably like most of you in that room. And actually doing something, applying ourselves, was almost therapeutical during this time. And in the same time, we saw that there was just an empire of flies hitting the Western world. We are very strong on digital. We are the largest clients of the likes of Google and Meta in the education world. And we saw 40 million accounts fired up on the 7th of October, which was clearly state players. And also media. I mean, media was not. I mean, I don't know. Probably US was probably a little bit better, but again, not all US. But in Europe, it was disgusting. I mean, we sort of as a 7th of October was awful, but the 8th of October in London was as traumatizing. You know, people were doing picnics, people were celebrating. The media was not supportive, so we decided to really apply our. Well, we've done many things. The first 3 days, we brought thousands of soldiers back home. We worked with the Israeli government. We brought Boris Johnson home. My son asked me, "Dad, you did not vote for Boris Johnson. Why do you bring Boris Johnson to Israel?" I said, "I want people in the pub to speak well about us," right? And then we build an ecosystem of about 32 people in Israel, creating stories, and then working with publicists to place those stories. And that's what's impactful. It's still working and sustainable. So it's effectively build a startup. I could dedicate 80% of my time in the last 9 months to that project. Now I'm going back to business because I have to, but still maintaining what we have. So creating something which is sustainable was very special.
The same question?
Same, yeah.
So I would say that from the beginning, we believed very much in doing things together. We don't believe in doing things alone. And that's something that we took from day one with us. And the reason I pointed out, because I think in philanthropy or sometimes in what we call social investing, and there are many good names for doing philanthropy, people get confused and they think they can do it all by themselves and they can save the world. And I don't think it's possible. We all need each other. And as a result of it, from the beginning, we figured out a way, and I said 22 years ago, to work together with the government, to work together with the local municipalities, and with other sectors, the business sectors, which we heavily, all of us, you cannot be a philanthropist without to be in the business sector. And we wanted to combine it all together, to use the power of everyone with the understanding that a philanthropist, the role is to start and to go, to leave. Let others that know to do the work better do it. And in most cases, it's municipalities, government, and I don't say that in a political way. We do not get involved in anything politically, but we work with elected officials because the big money and the sustainable models of implementing for the long run, they have it. If they are part of it, things that you believe in will take place. If it's education, and if it's other sectors, employment, and anything, social welfare, that led us to develop a certain way of working. So it's not necessarily about how much we give. although it's important. It's how we do it. Who is part of it? Do you have exit strategy from day one? Because a good business model should have, in my mind, exit if needed. Okay, some businesses do not have to leave. That led us to make certain choices. That's one. Number two, we always chose to be in areas that others are not working at. So A, we do not duplicate, we don't step on each other's toes, and in the same time, we don't need to reinvent the wheel where it's not needed. We like to be, and it's not always easy, I'm going to say that to my friends and colleagues, it's very lonely to be where everyone else is not there. It means that you are alone. It means that people criticize you. It means it's not popular or sexy to be at. To do mental health 15 years ago was not cool. To do inclusion of people with disability 22 years ago, it's not as today when everyone says inclusion and authentic voices. We were lonely. Our fellows philanthropists and business people used to say, why are you doing it? Literally, why? And we said, because our business is not to be popular. Our business is to do social justice. Our business is to change society. And the last thing we decided to do is to combine a method that says advocacy alongside projects, which is today maybe clear to us because social media is very powerful, and today, doco stories are, the cool thing to watch. But go with me 22 years ago. To be a philanthropist or investor, I not like the word philanthropist, I like investor. People will say, why are you doing what you're doing? Awareness means campaigns. Awareness means rapid response. Awareness means media. Awareness means creation of content on social media. And 20 years ago, people will tell you as an investor or as a philanthropist, are you doing it to gain a credit? Are you doing it to be known? And I have news for you. It was not known for the Ruderman. It was known for the organizations. It was known for the field. And what I'm trying to tell you is you have to create a strategy in order to create impact. Even though you can give a lot of money, it doesn't mean it's going to be impactful. It doesn't mean it's going to create the change that you want. And more importantly, it doesn't mean it will be sustainable. So creating this method helped us to do what we do and to balance our business approach with our value and philanthropy approach.
So it's less about what you do and what kind of gift, but how you do it.
Yes. And if you don't have a passion, it's not going to be successful. You have to be fully passionate around it.
Thank you.
Good. Okay. You pretty much encapsulated exactly what our strategy is as well. It's all about partnerships. It's all about being a catalyst. It's about having an exit strategy, which we don't do very well quite often. We get very emotionally attached to the relationships that we've built over the years. So you captured the philosophy. I'll give one specific example. About 20 years ago, one of our trustees was a guy named Norman Seiden, who had a very deep relationship with Technion University. And his philosophy was to do wholesale, not retail, is what we used to say. And that meant, don't scatter around so many small little grants. Give large grants that are transformational. Let's spend time really developing relationships, developing a deep business plan, developing a long-term view of how this will create change. So Technion approached us about making a grant for nanotechnology as the next great science that was going to transform Israel and the world. And we didn't want to build a building. We wanted it to go to the materials that they needed in order to do the science, to buy a $25 million microscope and do all these crazy things, which I barely understood at the time. We also had a relationship at the time with Ehud Olmert, who was then the Minister of Industry. And we went to him and he said, will the government match our $25 million grant to Technion? And he said, sure. And every other university was up in arms. Like, what do you mean? How can you do that? And he said, well, if you raise money, we'll match your grants as well. It ended up being about a $250 million sum total that was raised between government sources and foundation resources to build nanotechnology in Israel. It's one of our most successful projects that we've invested in. There's an obelisk at Technion University that unfortunately the obelisk doesn't work, but it's but the grant towards nanotechnology worked really well.
Thank you, Scott. I'd like to switch gears into a topic that actually I feel that this summit has been put together also with the purpose of trying to find language and reflect and talk about what happened a year ago on October 7th. And in this context, I hear many people in Israel talking about the conception. There was a conception up until October 7th, and everything, and it failed, and now everything is new. There is no more conception. Something new should be put together. I don't know if it's true or not, but I was wondering if you feel that since October 7th, the model that was developed in philanthropy until now in the Jewish American community or overseas in England, whether this model should change. What is the conception since October 7th and the role of philanthropy in the world that was created since then?
Since I have the microphone, I'll start as well. So I think just to translate conceptia into what's the concept, what's the big idea, what's the guiding principle. And I think it's a good segue from what I was saying in terms of the involvement of the federal government, let's just use the word federal, in Israel to help support these things. And I think the new concept for us, with the failure of the government to appear, and we've been to Israel several times and up in the north and everywhere, and it's just amazing how there's absolutely no support at any level for people at the municipal level doing things for people who have left the north, people who left the Gaza envelope. And one of the most amazing aspects of that is how much individuals have stepped up to create the change and to do the things that need to be done, from creating childcare to creating insurance and medical care and everything. So for us, the shift has been, in terms of philanthropy, is focusing on municipalities. How can municipalities really take charge of creating change? For years, we've worked with the cadet program in Israel, which has really been amazing in terms of putting very smart, well-trained, educated people into key positions in municipal governments to advise mayors who often don't have the technical expertise to make the kind of change or implement what they need to do with the grant money that's coming in. So I think our focus really is now looking at municipal governments and how they can make a difference in terms of social change.
Wow, there's so much I want to say about your question. And I will start by saying, just to tie it, before I answer this exact question, philanthropy, in my mind, it's all about people. It's about relationships. And I think as we lost many principles, in the last few years, we lost this understanding because we invest in people. You do not invest just in good ideas, and you do not definitely invest in places. You invest because you believe in someone, because they nurture relationship with you. And it's important because it's very much tied to your question. I personally think we, in the world of investors, need to be louder. We need to take our power in a good way to help the nonprofits, the profits, the municipalities, the government to navigate through these enormous challenges. Nothing that we do in the Jewish world, no matter where we live, Europe, Africa, Israel, anywhere, does not happen without philanthropy / investors, okay? Nothing. Name your idea and we're all going to know, without to even sometimes feel comfortable to say, philanthropists are behind it. What does it mean? That philanthropy has power, and in a good way, not power in a bad way, okay? Because power can be negative too. We see this conference, what we see here, it's a testimony of power that philanthropists with vision have, and they fund it. Why do I say it? Because today I think that the Jewish world, as much as we woke up, and you said at least, what the work that we see in Israel is not loud enough. We are not doing what we need to do enough. And to be loud doesn't mean necessarily just in the media. I mean internally. Internally, we're not sitting strong enough. We're not taking all our brains and all our money, because I just want to give some facts. Okay? Jewish money in United States, and we both sit in Jewish Funders Network board, we're talking about what? 3%, 4% goes to Jewish causes. Do you understand that most of the Jewish money, and we're talking about billions of dollars, do not go to Jewish causes? It is more important to our fellows to give to orchestra, museum, hospitals, not in Israel necessarily, in the world. Please don't get me wrong, I think it's important. We need to build our local communities. We need to have strong relationships. We need to have our people having, best mind. But most of us do not give Jewishly. Most of us, although October 7 took place and anti-Semitism in its top in the US, do not sit together, the billionaires and the millionaires, in one room and saying, oh my God, what do we need to do? How are we changing this reality? It doesn't happen, okay? Meaning, it's not painful enough for us. The ego is still what drives us. The causes are not waking us up. So I don't want to paint a negative reality, because I think the fellows, friends that I have doing the most amazing work, and I salute each one of the funders. But I do want to encourage us to say, we have to take our power seriously. Do not underestimate the power. President Trump, former President Trump was here yesterday. It's a testimony of the power that the philanthropists and investors have. I'm not saying political right now, if it's good or not. What I'm saying is we need to support each other. We need to come together. We need to sit in the room and remember that it's our story. It's the Jewish people. And for us, what happens from October 7, although we work internationally, nationally, and locally, I think it's not hard to hide. My heart and passion and the Ruderman family is fully to the Jewish people and to the state of Israel. I have truly hard time right now working outside of the Jewish world, and we are part of the outside Jewish world, and I have a hard time. I find it less meaningful, and it's the call of the hour to bring our heart and our mind to the Jewish nation and to the Jewish state.
I mean, Shira is absolutely spot on, and it was fascinating for me because till a year ago I didn't work in the Jewish call it philanthropy or causes, and oh my God, talking of egos, talking about indeed not enough pain, chas v'chalila, really getting people to work together or even know each other. It's, I mean, for me, again, as a donor who in a unique position, I was uniquely positioned, I could apply myself, and literally I had to bribe my way for people to work together. It's hard. And also, what we saw is that some organizations were absolutely phenomenal in crisis, and some organizations just did not rise for the occasion at all, which was actually supposed to do exactly that. So I'm really glad you asked that question. I think there is, the way I run my business, when something happens and you see issues and something not fit for purpose, you do strategic review. And you actually say, okay, so let's get together what are the things which are working? What are the things which we need to change? How we work needs to change. Some of the leaderships, I think reporting is huge. How much money goes to which causes, what percentage goes directly to the causes, how much cooperation goes on, how much duplication goes on. And then for us, for donors, when we invest, we shouldn't be investing without having this transparent, consistent reporting framework. But I think it's a fantastic time to make the change.
Thank you. It's, I'm glad we're having this conversation because now it's actually an opportunity to switch to the question of why and the values. I know that when we call philanthropy has many names, but the names matter. When you call something charity, it comes from a Greek root, charios, the heart, and it implies certain direction how people and why people give. In Judaism, it comes from the root tzedek, which means what is the right thing to do? And that's a question about values. A few months ago, we were inspired to read about the Scott Berrie Foundation pulling out money from the Columbia University because of what's happening there. That's a call of values. And many other philanthropists followed the same way. But my question is, in the uncertain situation that we are now, where we don't know, what's the new conception? We don't know, right? I was wondering, how do you see the path forward based on the values that you manifest? That's a question to Scott, but really to everyone, how those values could help us to deal with uncertainty, and what would be the best way forward for your foundations, for example?
It's a very good question, and I'm not sure that I have an answer for it. I think we are muddling through very difficult times when, as I said before, we build relationships over decades, and we simply just continue to see what was happening at Columbia and just feel like even though our donation was really to the medical school and to diabetes, and that was very separate from the Morningside main campus, we still felt like we had an obligation, because the vast majority of our resources go to the Jewish world, and that is where our values lie, that we had to do something in order to match our values with what was happening there, and we had to use our platform to make that decision. It was something, there was an article about this decision in the New York Times, and for those of you who read it, I think it really captured that it was a really deliberative process for us. It wasn't something easy at all. We tried to have conversations with President Shafiq, or former President Shafiq, and they were kind and cordial, and we got our message across, but we didn't see the kind of change that we really had hoped for. So I think the only thing I would have to say about this is really that taking our money away, I'll tell you a story. That morning that it happened and that the article came out, my son was visiting me from college, and I proudly sent around the link to all of my family members. And that day, my son and I were supposed to go to an event in New Jersey. He's 19 years old, and he said he was ashamed. He said he was ashamed that he felt like of me and what we had done. And he's 19, so I was like, okay, this is going to be a rough conversation. We're in the car for the next hour. And nobody else say this outside of this room. This is our code of secrecy here. And he felt like we were trying to control speech, that we were trying to control in some way. And it was a really it made me really kind of look inside, what are we really trying to achieve? And I said to him, what we're trying to achieve is not to control speech. What we're trying to achieve is to reaffirm our relationship and say, we love this university, we love what we've done for the university, we love how many people we've helped, but we need to take a step back and re-engage in a conversation to make change. And we have a meeting with the interim president in a few weeks to sort of figure out a path forward. It's not going to be fast. It's going to be a long-term change over many, many years that will go way beyond the life of our foundation. And what I said to him is, when you're in a relationship with someone and they're not doing things that you feel are behaving in a way that you agree with, you need to make a stand and you need to have a conversation. You can't just sit by and watch it happen. I don't think he believed me, but one can hope. And so, I think it's incumbent on us not to walk away, but to actually re-engage the university, to re-engage the people who are in charge, to say we can't invest in something that we don't believe in, and we want to see change in the university, and those changes are, to protect the Jewish community on campus, to not allow this kind of violent outbursts against the Jewish community, and we hope that we can somehow influence decisions that are being made, but it's a very difficult path forward.
Of course, I was wondering if it connects to what you described being louder, and how could we be louder about that?
First, I think we need to say kol hakavod for your action. I do think it's to speak loud in values. My daughter she's 19 years old, she goes to Columbia. Thank you for not supporting the school. I think it's a statement. But I also want to say that's an example in my mind that there is right and wrong. Okay, and we also lost this. We are so uncomfortable today to say there is right and wrong. There is bad and good. And I think that the compass of making this right and wrong decisions is our values. It is not necessarily the cause. It's not necessarily the amount. Is the ability to say there is time for everything. And if the values do not match, we have to act, and it's painful. I totally hear and understand you. I think universities are so difficult to work with, and there is so little at times of what we can do because of so many types of freedom that you need to give to the academia or to other restrictions. However, this is a time, I think, in our history, in human history, in a Jewish history, that is on us to choose right and wrong, who is part of the story, who is not part of the story, and we do not need to feel uncomfortable, because with perspective of time, maybe it's not popular now, maybe we're not going to be the cool kids on the block, but I have to say, who cares at times? So we're not going to be cool, but in 50 years, the grandkids, I hope, that we'll have will say, oh my God, I'm so proud of my parents that they made this decision because they taught me a bigger lesson than investing. They taught me to choose between right and wrong and to stand up for the right thing. So I really, really want to say thank you to you and to others that were brave to pull this. But I want to give an example of a donor. Of course, we're not going to say names. That I had a conversation and I said, would you consider pulling your donation from Harvard? We're talking about, again, very heavy investing. And they said to me something that I don't agree with, but I learned to respect. It would not be my choice, but they said, us pulling our money would not make maybe a difference in the school because it's such a rich school. Although, $40, $50, $100 million, it's a significant donation. But they said we also need to keep our ability to have access to make a change. Now, I disagree with the choice. I obviously called to say, please pull your money, like Bill Hackman pulled the same moment. Please do this, please consider. But she said to me, I want to be able to call the president when something happens and walk in and make a change. And why am I saying to us? However, I said there is right and wrong, and there is. But on your action, there are different ways to make change and impact, and we need to value that also. Not one way can create a change. So what you did, I commend, and what they do, I disagree with. However, I respect you both for being brave and willing to walk into the room and say, I'm a proud Jew, I'm a proud Zionist, and you have to listen to us if you want to work with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. How does it manifest in your business environment? I wonder whether you get a chances to make calls based on values.
No, absolutely. So it's interesting. So coming back to philanthropy and kind of choosing, because we were trying to apply ourselves and do a lot of different things, and then the choice were looking at our almost SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses. Where can we be the most impactful? Where can we win or move a needle? There was a particular channel which we felt we cannot do because we are civilians. So choosing to play fairly, and winning fairly. So we also found, so for example, when we talk about social media, for example, I mean, we were fighting against just this huge machine of state players, and one of the suggestions was, well, if you go to India, you can find 100 million accounts who will do what Iran and Russia does, but we are not a state player. So what it is we can do as citizens. And then the strategy was that, okay, if you cannot go after the post, let's go after the host. Let's really engage in lobbying and work with policymakers to hold social media platforms to account, and that's a lot of focus. But there's a lot of things I listen to myself a little bit. I feel how I feel about people, about situations as well, and talking about exit, when to start, when to exit. So.
Thank you. I would like, in a few minutes that we have left, to open it for questions. And let me see. We have a lot, but we can take a couple. You were the first, and then
my question to Shira and Scott. You are leaders in the philanthropy world, and obviously there are many people who are following you, like myself, for example, on much smaller scale. My question to you is, donating money for the projects in Israel, it's easy right now because there are so many things which we can support and donate. For example, my passion is Boys Town in Jerusalem, the wonderful school which I'm supporting for more than 20 years. At the same time, I have a crisis in the United States, supporting the projects in the United States. And I'll give you one example. For many years, I'm a Russian Jew, a Russian-speaking Jew, let's say. I came from Soviet Union 33 years ago. And for all these years, I was giving donation to HIAS, the Hebrew Aid Immigrant Society. Every year we're getting a letter, those who were sponsored by HIAS, who brought us from Soviet Union after years and years being refuseniks. And of course, those who are successful, and there are 450,000 Russian-speaking Jews in the United States who came through HIAS, we always send money to HIAS on different scale, from $100 to $10,000. Nobody knows, and nobody talks about it, that the HIAS right now is not bringing Jews to the United States or to Israel or to any other place. The HIAS is bringing 77,000 Muslims from Syria, from Gaza, from Yemen, and helping them. And it's the biggest and largest placing agency in the United States for Muslim refugees. But they're raising money among of Jews, completely misleading the Jewish audience. They are the wealthiest organization, which is a member of the Conference of Presidents. The another wealthiest organization in the Conference of Presidents is a J Street. My question to you, how can we stop Jewish money flourishing or coming into the organization, which obviously anti-Israel, have anti-Israel agenda, who are supporting, by the way, the demonstrations in the campuses. And how could we prevent it?
He said for you.
I think he said it for both of us, but so, yeah, okay. Thank you for that, and I smiled because Boys Town, when I was 21 years old, I made Aliyah, and I went, and my father said, I want to make a donation, I'm making donations to Boys Town, Jerusalem, could you go? And I went to visit, and what I was really focused on was whether or not kids from Boys Town were being encouraged to go onto yeshiva or to become a part of Israeli society and serve in the IDF and so on and so forth. This was 30 years ago. Hopefully the agenda of the organization has changed, but at the time it was a bit of a rough conversation between me and my dad. But Boys Town is an amazing organization. Listen, I mean, we're a broad and diverse community of people, giving to different causes. Certainly, the American Jewish community tends to lean a more, liberal. I think there's two parts of your question. One, how do you have an awareness of where your dollars are going? That's where I thought your question was going. Like, how do you know and how do you verify that your money is going towards something you want it to go towards? And I think we're fortunate that we have the resources to have a staff to do the kind of deep dive into the organizations that we support, to verify everything from social media posts to, where their actual dollars are going. You can go online, you can look up these organizations and find out what they're funding. That's all publicly available information. And I think it's incumbent on all of us to do that kind of homework and not just give blindly to different organizations. So I think that's my answer.
The only addition to, first of all, I absolutely agree. The only addition is, I would say, the Jewish community over the years held a certain philosophy to expand the tent and to be able to support, to let others to come in, served us for many, many reasons and for many years. I do think we pushed it a bit too far, and we reached a point that there are quite a few organizations, like what you pointed out, and few others, that have hard time to serve the Jewish community, so they're changing and pivoting over time to serve other communities funded by Jews. My advice, it's a personal advice. On the professional one, I totally agree with Scott. Like, do your homework, do not support organizations you do not see eye to eye with, and demand transparency. Demand transparency. On the bigger picture, I think the Jewish community has to get together and make a wise decision to stop funding others. It's time to concentrate in ourselves, and we do not need to feel uncomfortable to say it, because part of the conversation right now is the progressive mode that we are in, to feel uncomfortable to say that something is just for Jews. It's very uncomfortable for us because it's not like us. We want to say everyone is invited. Sorry, we are in a time that we need to say not everyone is invited and not everyone is welcome, not because we're not inclusive, because we are limited in sources. We do not see everyone else standing for us, and our people are first. But that's a bigger decision than probably you, me, or some of us in the room can make. Again, that's the power of the funders.
My biggest issue actually with philanthropy coming out from the United States is, look, Israel, and I'm going to be a little bit controversial here, and I hope I'm not going to offend too many people, okay? Israel is actually a wealthy country. And there's a lot of Jews around the world who can give a lot of money. There's one thing which Israel needs from US Jews, and that's America being strong ally to Israel. And at the moment, when you look at the young people, the next generation of voters, they are not with us. And that's an existential threat to Israel. So for me, if we could invest more into educating and working with young audience and working on this opinion, because this is everything. We are, U.S. is a democracy. I think this is single biggest thing which U.S. Jews can do for Israel.
I think we're running out of time, but I want to, yes.
I mean, just, the most important thing that I hear the story is that if you don't publish this information, nobody will know about it. As Shira said, Israel first. So we have to publish it, that's all it is.
I'm told that we are running out of time. Can we have one more question? Just one more question. Okay, so I promised this gentleman to ask a question. Yeah, go ahead.
My name is Lenny Silverman. Thank you very much. I'm curious, based on what you just said, and the question is perfect. I'm curious what your visions are as it relates to the usage and the power of social media as it relates to Gen Z in today's post-October 7th world. Thank you.
So you're asking what's the power of social media?
Yes.
Unfortunately, too much, and a bad one. Do you want to answer first?
So look, we spend a lot of time on this. This is this is a huge problem. The social media power is way too much. I think there needs to be an enormous pressure on policymakers around regulation. It's hugely unregulated. I think the combination of AI and social media is probably one single biggest threat, not just to the Jews, but to democracy of the Western world. I think there's a lot to be done in this space. It's one. I personally, I think this is single most dangerous threat to the Western civilization.
Very well said.
I would like to thank you for joining us for this session. I'm sure this conversation could continue for many more hours, and we can continue that at this summit informally. Thank you for coming. I appreciate it.